Welcome back to my garden. Last week I was talking about thinking by analogy, and in particular using the analogy of our physical well-being to try and shed some sort of light on our state in a more abstract sort of way, our intellectual, psychological well-being. Well, I thought, having spoken about it, let's try and put it in practice. So I started rolling around the idea of the comparison or the mapping between three components, as I outlined last week, of our physical well-being: rest, exercise, and essentially fuel, food. And so thinking about how that maps onto my own psychological or spiritual state. But it struck me that perhaps part of the problem in doing that is a lack of evidence. We talk about things in a very abstract sort of way. But what do we have to back up our conclusions or observations or reflections? And actually, this whole internal dialogue is taking place at a wonderful time of the year, because it's last week marked the 23rd of September, a glorious date for those of you who track things in a OCD sort of way, because the 23rd of September is the first day of the last 100 days of the year, and hence a perfect time for some sort of mythical 100-day challenge. And these 100-day challenges are interesting, even if very artificial ways of perhaps embedding a habit or measuring something, or coming to grips with an important element of your daily routine. There's a wonderful video on YouTube. I think it's a TEDx talk with a chap who does a 100-day drawing challenge and becomes an illustrator. And it's a very sincere, not one of those TED talks which has been basically constructed to act as a promotion or a sideline to a book, or vice versa, or a speaking career. No, this is a guy who is an illustrator, and he's simply talking about how he'd loved drawing and then decided to commit himself to drawing, where even if it's quick, even if it's very unpolished, every day, and share his work. And as it happens, this turned out to be, I think, a game changer for him. Now, I'm not doing a 100-day drawing challenge. I've tried that before, actually, and it's something that I confess I gave up on. And that's the risk, of course, with these 100-day challenges, with anything where we have like an over-ambitious goal. It is just so easy to give up. But given that my focus is trying to gather some sort of useful data, my challenge is to, no small task, track my day for 100 days. Now, I'm not doing this in a very detailed sort of way or sophisticated way. I'm not using one of the multitude of extraordinary apps that are available, because I'm trying to use my phone less. And when I've done this before, these sort of tracking exercises, I've done them in very fixed sort of blocks. Instead, this time what I'm doing is simply at a couple of moments in the day, I jot something down approximately right, and see where it leaves me at the end of the day. And it doesn't take me, I would say, more than 5 minutes spread out in perhaps 4 sessions of the day to fill in one side of my A4 sheet. And I've got 5 very rough categories, 5 or 6, I can't remember. I'll spell them out and you can keep count. So I look at eating, meal times. I look at neutral time, so feeding my dogs or daily ablutions or anything that is essentially part of a normal sort of day and doesn't really detract in a significant sort of way. So reading is fine if it's a book. And then I have a little slot which is rest time. At the moment that is limited specifically to measuring my snooze after lunch. And then we come on to the sort of meat and potatoes category. And that is wasted time, sculpture, and my chess activities. Now, chess, to be specific, not all times that I'm engaged with chess count as a chess activity. Only things that fit in with my written down, stated chess training program. So it's got to be something that constructively is helping me improve at chess. My blitz games don't count. Watching videos on YouTube don't count. Those sort of things, together with reading newspapers, internet rabbit holes and the like, all that goes into the large bucket of wasted time. If I look at something on the internet that is very specifically a sort of restful activity, let me give you an example what that might actually include. I love a particular guitar quartet, and I sometimes listen to them as a sort of act of meditation. It's a particular piece that I listen to, Japura River, a composition by Philip Glass, and it's about 4.5 minutes. Truly wonderful. And I literally shut my eyes, listen to the music, and I try and kind of flow with the music. I don't know how to explain it. I sort of try and anticipate what's coming next. I've listened to this piece hundreds of times. I sort of try and become one with the music. I don't want to sound too over the top. But it is a meditative exercise. And as far as I'm concerned, those 5 minutes whilst spent on the internet, that's restful. That's not wasted time at all. Anyway, I've been reasonably diligent with my 100-day challenge so far. A couple of the days I've had to finish it off the next morning, but that's fine. I'm not going to use this as a sort of trigger for self-flagellation. There's no need for that. But what I have found is that I waste between 3.5 and 6.5 hours a day. And this doesn't come as a surprise. It's not a surprise at all that I might spend 5 hours on the internet fruitlessly. Is probably, well, as I say, it's quite expected that that's the case for me, and probably not that unusual. I suspect many people do exactly the same thing. And perhaps at this stage, defensively even, you are saying, but Neil, what's the problem with that? You know, have you been meeting your commitments? And of course, in a time tracking exercise, you know, I do this a lot anyway. I do this with my sculpture. I keep a diary, but I'm sort of doing it twice just to be rigorous. And yesterday, for example, I spent 8 hours doing very productive things. And quite honestly, that's above the normal batting average. I have no doubt, I'm confident in saying that. There's all sorts of interesting research. I will not put a link in the comments section or the description because, I'd have to look it up. But I think it's perhaps something that you will have come across as well, where people talk about how that sort of traditional work hour day, 8-hour day, when you actually break it down, many people aren't doing more than 2.5 hours of really constructive stuff each day. And large swathes of the day are spent doing complete nonsense. Sometimes it's nonsense that they really shouldn't be doing, looking at social media or reading the newspaper. Sometimes it's nonsense which maybe does serve a decent work purpose, the water cooler chats. Sometimes it's nonsense that is ostensibly work related, but it's basically pointless emails. The David Graeber bullshit jobs, where in fact the entire day might be spent doing stuff that is entirely pointless. That's another topic, and I've delved into that before anyway. But getting back to where I was, to spend 6, 7, 8 hours a day productively is surely no bad thing. But this is where the analogy kind of kicks in. Imagine, for example, you're a person who worked very diligently throughout the day. You got your decent 8 hours sleep each evening. You ate a healthy diet. You did some basic exercise. And each evening, when you finished work, 6 days a week, you went off with your colleagues to the pub and you spent 2-3 hours having a few pints with the mates and having a laugh. Well, what's the problem with that? You're healthy, you're getting your work done, but this is where thinking by analogy comes in quite handy, because in that area, in fact, there is all sorts of very good research done that clearly demonstrates that no, you're not healthy. You might be maintaining your weight at a desirable level because you're exercising. You might be seemingly sharp and efficient in the office, but that evening activity is actually staying with you, if not in the traditional hangover, but in a sort of collateral effect the next day and cumulatively over time. So you're not working as well as you could be or should be. And it's also having an effect on your relationships and all sorts of other things. And it begs the question why you feel the need to do that. Well, I don't want to answer that question right now, because that again is the stuff for a whole new series of videos, and I've spoken about that before, because that certainly was me in the past. But thinking by analogy, me in the present, so analogy with the past version of me, and an analogy also with a different sphere of life, I can see the damage that did. And so it's very easy for me to look at my time wasted on the internet and draw a very simple conclusion. This is not a good thing, not because I'm falling into the group of a wasted virtual generation, or something like that, but for a whole string of reasons. It's too much time, and it has an effect on me, and I can probably pin that down a little bit more. Now, again, you could argue that talking about thinking by analogy, well, I knew all of this anyway, But I think doing these exercises gives you a framework to pick something apart and maybe dig into it a little bit more deeply. Now, analogies or no analogies, I've reached a sort of watershed mark of 15 minutes. I think it's time to wrap this up, and I'll have a playback and see where we go next with it. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. I trust your lives are filled with joy, and until next week, from a sunny Brazil, ciao.